Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Community Foundation. I think for some of you, it's the first time you've had a meeting in this office. So hopefully you'll enjoy the environment and the content that we have coming to you today. Want to also thank Connexus Credit Union because they're going to be providing our lunch today. So very nice of them. In support of our mission to inspire charitable giving to invest in a brighter community, we're happy that you're here today to discuss student mental health. Almost 9 out of 10 students who face academic challenges say that affects their mental health. And in 2021, 28% of students said they often feel isolated from others. In fact, on October 18, the US Surgeon General, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Vivek Murthy, said he likes to start conversations on youth mental health with 3 numbers, 57, 44, and 11. 57, that's the percentage increase in the suicide rate among young people in the US from the decade before COVID. And 44, that's the percentage of American high school students who feel persistently sad or hopeless right now. And then the third number is 11, and that's the average number of years between a child's first symptoms of a mental health issue and when they actually receive treatment. So Dr. Murthy summed it up by saying, combine these numbers with the stories we hear all across the country, and it's clear that we're in a crisis. And it's not just children who feel the impact, their families and communities do too. And everyone has a role to play in addressing those concerns. We all know that student mental health is not only a national concern, but also a concern here in the greater Wausau area. And our purpose here at the foundation is to strengthen our region by connecting the philanthropic generosity of donors with impactful solutions that will last for generations. The WEA is one organization that is working on solutions for our own struggling youth. And the WEA Member Benefits Foundation identified school-based mental health as a growing and unmet need for K-12 students and schools, and a concern that private philanthropy rarely addresses. They reached out to us asking if we would hold a donors forum, and that's why we're here today. So with a goal to expand private philanthropic support for school-based mental health programs throughout Wisconsin, the WEA, in partnership, let's see how I say that, with the WEA Trust, has been providing grants to K-12 school districts, and they've shown some positive results in their pilots that they've run. So the reason we're here today is to learn more about what the WEA is doing. And with that, I'll introduce and let Steve Goldberg come up and talk to us.
Thanks, Tim. And thanks for holding your applause because we have a real tight schedule today. We're not here to raise money. I want you to know that. We're here to raise awareness about this issue. And many of you already are quite familiar and sometimes painfully familiar with this issue because of a family member, a neighbor, or a friend. Indeed, 20% of the student population presents with mental or behavioral health challenges. And the average wait time to get an appointment with a pediatric psychiatrist in the state of Wisconsin is between 6 and 18 months. So things can get crooked pretty fast and dysfunctional pretty fast. Some say that mental health or addiction is a family disease, not just the individual who's affected. And in some of our schools, it becomes a classroom issue, not just for those several students, but 20% of students have those issues. And the WEA Member Benefits Foundation decided that if we wanted to determine what are the issues that are keeping school districts awake at night. Superintendents, we have one here from Wausau, Keith Hiltz is with us, showing how important this issue is to him and to the whole district and the Board of Education here in Wausau. And we wanted to know what was keeping public educators awake at night before we decided how to focus our agenda at the WEA Member Benefits Foundation. Based in Madison, the WEA Member Benefits Company provides insurance and retirement services to about 90,000 educators in the state of Wisconsin, and is active in about 400 of the 421 school districts. So we thought, well, we have a statewide obligation and opportunity. We were told by educators, superintendents, and others that one issue keeping them awake at night was student mental health, that it was a real challenging issue for the school districts. The school districts know how to handle it, but what's missing is resources. And I said, well, what's missing from that picture? And they said, private philanthropy is missing. So I went to my friends in the private philanthropy field, where I've been active for a long time. And I asked if they were interested in supporting student mental health in their backyard, their own communities. They said, yes, but we don't know where to send the check. We don't know how much will make a difference. We don't know how to evaluate the effectiveness of what the school districts are trying to do already. And we don't know how to measure or assess the results. And I said, what if somebody did that for you? And they said, we would write the check tomorrow morning. So that's what I'm doing. I'm getting reacquainted with the state of Wisconsin, which is where I was born and raised, and connecting school districts with private funders. And so far, we've helped 6 school districts in the state of Wisconsin secure $1 million of additional money that they otherwise wouldn't have gotten from the private sector. And they're using that money to serve about 5,000 additional students. Wausau is the most recent district that we added. And in a few minutes, you'll find out why we picked Wausau. But before that, I just want to indicate that school districts generally are terrified of trying to raise money from the private sector. It's not in their wheelhouse. It's not in their sweet spot. Especially school district leaders who are in charge of the student mental health program. They're not in charge of that program in order to raise money. They're in charge of that program in order to help our kids. So what we're doing is helping school districts understand how to tell their story. School districts are great storytellers. And by putting those school district storytellers in front of the right funders, we've been able to help them raise $1 million in 1 year. We engaged an academic partner from the University of Wisconsin Center for Community Nonprofit Studies, on whose board I happen to sit, so they always return my calls. And we engaged them in a 2-year period to evaluate the pilot project. And they found that, according to the school districts, participating students show signs of more academic progress and better health and attendance. Absenteeism has gone down and so on. And the funders we engaged, including one of whom you'll hear from in a few minutes, Connexus Credit Union right here in Wausau, told us that they appreciated the opportunity to get to know the mental health issues a little bit more clearly in their community, and also having us vet that school district before connecting the school district with the funder. And there is a statewide model from the Department of Public Instruction, a framework for delivering multi-tiered, holistic service, wraparound service for students who are suffering mental or behavioral health issues. So the conclusion was that the pilot demonstrated the validity of the funding model. The funding model, by the way, is predicated on unrestricted grants, because we as funders don't know the best way to help kids. We pay somebody else to know that, and that's the school district. So trust-based philanthropy is an emerging trend in philanthropy these days, where I tell school districts who tell me that they don't have time to write out a grant application for the money that we are offering them. Say, great, we don't want the grant application. All you have to do is survive a 90-minute interview with me and let me get inside your head, which is what I did with Andy and Cal from the Wausau district. And if I like the way you think about student mental health delivery, then you're in. And if I can help tell your story to other funders, you're in. And in most cases, these grants are multi-tier, or I'm sorry, multi-year. And we're finding that some funders, one funder came to me and said, we want to do something in Dane County, Madison area. And they said, which school district needs our help? I said, well, Sun Prairie is about $25,000 short of its goal. Okay, we'll give them $20,000. I said, no, you won't. I want you to talk to Janet Thomas, who runs the Sun Prairie School District's mental health program first, and then tell me how much money you'd like to offer. I knew what was going on because Janet Thomas was terrified of fundraising, but she loved telling stories. So I let them loose on a phone call. And sure enough, the next morning, senior program officer from this large family foundation called me and said, damn, you were right. We're not going to give them 20,000. We're going to give them 100,000 for each of the next 3 years. So then I called Janet Thomas and I said, how did it feel to raise $300,000 without trying to raise money? Just telling the story. So I feel pretty good about it so far, but with 421 school districts in the state of Wisconsin, 6 are just not enough. And we actually, Wausau became the 6th a couple months ago. And one of the things that really helped us in securing Wausau's participation and knowing that we would be able to help attract additional dollars was the fact that Connexus Credit Union stepped forward unsolicited. They had heard about the initiative. Bailey Sleeper, whom you'll hear from in just a minute, approached me and said that Connexus wanted to get involved. So Bailey Sleeper, you're not only the sponsor of our lunch today, you stepped forward with a major gift. I'd like you to tell people how much and why.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bailey, come on up here.
Thanks, Steve. So as Steve mentioned, Connexus first became aware of what they were doing through our partnership with the Wisconsin Philanthropy Network. And in sitting in some sessions with Steve, as you can tell, he's a very eloquent speaker, really knowledgeable about the issue and what they're doing. And approach Steve, we know here in the community mental health is a significant issue. It was identified in the Marathon County Life Report and, even something that's being addressed through the Alice Report. So we knew that it was something we wanted to get our hands around, but as a funder, we didn't know how to do that. So I connected with Steve, and really what helped sell us on it was, the Wausau School District and the results they shared with the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which Andy will touch on. But as a credit union, we have a significant employee population here in the Wausau area. These are our employees that are being affected. These are our neighbors, our friends, our kiddos. And we just felt so strongly and so moved and so hurt by some of those numbers that it was an easy sell to our board or our advisory committee for Connexus Cares. So we jumped in with a commitment of $40,000 each year for the next 3 years. And I know Andy and Kale will talk about specifically what that's going to go towards. But really, when we cut that check, it's unrestricted. So they have the ability and the power to choose what's going to best serve their needs, which I believe they identified will be a homelessness and mental health navigator, a really important resource that they don't really currently have. So it'll be really exciting to see this person come on board, interact and connect with our community and really make a difference in the lives of our kiddos. So I'll let you guys come up and talk a little bit more about the numbers and the background story.
You have the clicker, if you just see if you had not.
Oh, okay.
First. So thanks for being here today. My name is Cale Bushman. I'm the Director of People Services for the Wausau School District. This is my 2nd year in the position. Prior to being in this position, I was principal at Wausau East High School. I've been the principal at Eau Claire North for a few years. I spent some time as an assistant principal at Wausau West High School, and then before I was a special ed teacher. So certainly caring for kids has been something that's been a passion of mine throughout. So my job as part of this presentation is I get the really nice part to say thank you. Thank you for everything that you guys do. I'm going to share just a couple things that we found, a couple initiatives through the years about showing how compassionate our community is and how they come together for our students. So a few years ago, our district passed an operating referendum. The sole purpose of that operating referendum was to increase our pupil services staff. So more social workers, more psychs, more counselors. into our elementaries also include regional coordinators who are support staff to help with students who are having some struggles during their day. We also, another one was the generosity of Steve's team with Connexus and with WEA, being able to help fund some initiatives that we have going on, and then also bringing it back to the foundation and Caring for Community Kids. And this group was a generous supporter of a program that we just ran on October 26th, that was sprouted from a Caring for Community Kids organization committees that got together between DC, Everson, Wausau, and some other community partners to talk about mental wellness and what it looks like in our community. And I think one of the really important parts that came out of that is to talk about we house students. So it certainly is our cross to bear, but it's a community issue, right? These are all of our students, it's all of our families, it's everybody. And so how do we mobilize the community to start taking action in these areas? So the way that it started off is that Gina Lehman and Andy and I, Gina's the director of pupil services, student services for the Wausau School District, had some discussions as it came through and said, you know, we all have counselors, we all have social workers, but we have different languages sometimes. Same purpose, but different languages. And so we talked about, well, why aren't we getting our folks together more? Two districts, really good districts that we can share from each other and grow that direction. So one of the things that we decided is that we were going to have some professional development for our social workers, counselors, and bring in some speakers for that. The superintendents got wind of that and they thought it was a really good idea. So since they don't have to plan it, they decided not just for pupil services, but let's do it for the whole district. So on October 26th, we had every teacher from the DC Everett School District, every teacher from the Wausau School District took part in a professional development plan. All the secondary teachers were at Wausau West. All the elementary teachers were over at the high school at DC Everest. In each session, we were able to provide about 30 speakers that the teachers were able to choose from. Out of there, we had 5 nationally recognized speakers who spoke as well as a keynote, and your foundation helped support those speakers. So that really was a draw for our teachers. We surveyed our staff, both districts surveyed our staff as to how they felt it went, and they loved it. And overwhelmingly, they loved it, which sometimes you don't always get great feedback on professional development days from teachers because they think they want to be in my classroom, do my grades, but they really supported this. And I think that just shows there's a thirst for this right now that we see needs that we're having. So I guess I just share, I'm overwhelmed by the support and caring that our community shows. You know, sometimes you hear about how politically divided the world is right now, but when it comes to our kid, we're all on the same path. We care about them and we want what's best for them. We'll do what we need to support them. I'm going to invite Andy up in just a second. He's going to share some of the data with you. And he's also going to share some of the initiatives. As you're looking at that data, what I'd ask you guys to think about is what the gamut of mental wellness spans, right? And all too often we think about this far outlier as being the mental health concerns that we have. But if you talk to our students, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, they're all struggling in some aspect, and COVID certainly accentuated that, but they were having struggles before. And so there's a whole variety of reasons that might be the case, right? If you think about back when we were in high school, you were on the clock from 7:30 to 3 o'clock, and you had all the social struggles and social distress that went along with being a young person, right? If you think about the world of social media now, that never turns off for them, right? As long as Snapchat is functioning, as long as those things are going on, they've got the stress of that world on them as well. You'll also hear stories where they talk about, you know, it was interesting coming out of COVID when I was at Wausau East, we would talk with some of our exceptional students, right? And they were back in school and they were learning, but they kept hearing about how far behind we are academically. You're never going to be able to do well in college unless you can do this, this, and that. And so they're thinking, well, we just got done with this, and now we're hearing how far behind we are, and it just added to their stresses. And I'm thankful that I'm not a young person anymore in high school because their life is really difficult, right? And so one of the things that going into the Caring for Community Kids that we did when we talked about, we met with some student groups and we said, what do you guys need? And I think what one of the resounding comments that they made, they need adults to know where they're at and what it feels like. So that's impactful. So what I would say is, as Andy shares some of the things and some of the numbers to think about, this is all of our kids, right? It's the whole gamut that we're dealing with. So I'll stop talking. I'm going to invite Andy Grimm. He's our coordinator of pupil services for the Wausau School District. Andy is amazing, has a passion for kids, and does a great job. So
Morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'll start by saying I've been in the Wausau District for 26 years. I started as an elementary counselor, went through many different schools, so I've been able to watch the behavior and the mental health of our students change throughout those years. I'm also a third generation Wausauite. For those who have been around, my grandparents owned the airport. It used to be called Griggs Flying Service. So I have a strong connection to the community and I want what's best for the community. So if there's the opportunity to talk about adolescent and youth mental health, that's very much appreciated because it's going to continue to reduce the stigma, but also bring awareness that this is a community issue. So again, thank you for your time. Our priority statement, thank you, is ultimately to reduce the number of suicide attempts by adolescents and youth. When I say we, I'm not just talking about the Wausau School District, it's the greater Wausau community, as Tim was mentioning, that if we can systematically build in mental health supports and knowledge and information and strategies into the daily activities of a student, it doesn't become a check mark. It doesn't become we offered a mental health day, so that's good for our kids, and then move on. It has to be embedded and it has to be a daily operation of students, so they see that academics matters and mental health matters, and our students and our teachers are forming relationships, and that they show that they care about each other and not just the grades, but how are you doing and what's your day like? Because without personal well-being, the academics aren't going to succeed either. So if we can reduce that number, that's our ultimate goal. So we take a look at the data. In just yesterday, the state released the 23 fall youth risk behavior survey data. So I was able to sneak in a little bit of that information. I'm not going to go through each one, but I want to just highlight, if you look at the 22 spring data, attempted suicide, and these are students that self-reported. So out of 1,485 students who took the survey, 7% indicated that they attempted suicide. We don't know the severity of that. It could be, I took 4 Tylenol and went to bed, but in their mind, they're thinking that, or it could have resulted in hospitalization. 7% of 1,485 is 104 students. Our data just came back from the fall of 23. We had a little less students take it, but the number increased to 8%. So if we took 8% of 1,096, it's 88 students that self-reported they attempted suicide. And I think that is the greatest number to think about. And again, it goes back to our ultimate goal of reducing. Because we don't even want 1% to die by suicide. We want 0. And we need to get through that through our county. And I know it's also a life goal for our county as well. And then the other thing that Tim mentioned and others is the composite score, 57% from 22 and 58%. So 58% of the students, again, self-identified that they're having issues with anxiety, depression-like symptoms, seriously consider suicide, made a plan, or attempted, or self-harm. So that's over half. You walk into a classroom with 20 kids, 11, 12 of them have mental health issues on their mind, precipitating factors leading up to that class. Yes.
I'm sorry, Andy, I don't mean to cut you off. I just, you mentioned how many kids are in the school district or with the survey?
Mhm.
What was that number again? 400?
The number that took the survey is 1,485. That's not the number of students we have in the district.
Right, okay.
83% represents the number that we would have combined between East and West. The 45% would again be combined. So 45% of our East and West students took last spring's survey.
And this is consistent with other schools as well.
Yeah.
Nationally.
Yeah.
It's national and it's all available on American Pulse. You can pull up this, at least the 22 information's out there. Again, the 23 just came out yesterday. So Aaron Ruff is still doing all of that work. He probably hasn't had time to compile it.
They'll be working.
But we're working on it. So the next slide just talks about the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. So again, this is a website that's available to all of us. You just hop onto the department's site service and you can query out the number of hospitalization visits per age and per visit. So I did, and I looked at number of visits related to self-harm. So they're flagged as self-harm, the data only goes out to 21. And just highlighting the 10 and 14 and the 15 to 17-year-olds. So in Marathon County, you can see how many students or adolescents and youth needed to attend the emergency room or required hospitalization for self-harm behavior. That's serious. Next slide, please. In the Wausau District, at the elementary level, we have been and will continue to provide social emotional supports to all students. Through the referendum, we were able to provide a little bit more, but the needs increased at the same time that we added staff. So we're trying to combat the number of issues, yet the number of staff increased, so we're pretty much equal prior to the referendum. So things that we do, we offer a screening through Dr. Hartwig, and it's called the Best Screener. This is a universal screener for students from pre-K to 5, and then it allows us to identify if they have externalizing behaviors, internalizing behaviors, and then our pupil service professionals meet with the ones that have higher scores to try to provide some interventions and replacement behaviors. We do a EMLSS, that's our tiered level of support, it's academic and behavior. We run social academic intervention groups. We run brief and solution-based counseling. Just a reminder that our school counselors are not therapists, so they don't offer more legalized therapy-like services. We respond to crisis every day, and there's a limited supply of school-based therapy. Like 6 of our elementary school counselors have an MOU with agencies, but that leaves 7 or 8 without. And we have a K-5 guidance class. It provides social emotional lessons for every kindergarten through 5th grade twice a month. And then we also have Leader in Me, which is a school-wide culture, climate, social emotional program. And teachers lead at the elementary level. They lead lessons daily on this. At the secondary level, pretty much the same. A lot of our secondary counselors on a daily basis are providing crisis response for self-harm, suicide ideology. They're meeting with students who are emotionally dysregulated for anxiety or depression. They're offering brief and solution counseling. There is a therapist at all of our secondary levels, but for example, Horace Mann with about 700 students has one therapist, one day. John Muir has 2 therapists, 1 a half day, 1 a full day. Wausau East, 1 day. Like almost 900 students and there's 1 therapist for 1 day. That's not enough. We are running some mental health activities in the classroom and school-wide. It's also very important to know that over the last 2 years, so Tara as well for supporting for funding, we have started Raise Your Voice student clubs, and it's specifically designed for addressing adolescent mental health. So it's students leading students on mental health. And then of course we have Leader in Me that goes up across the district. If we were provided with additional resources, one thing we want to do is definitely hire a mental health navigator. We've had that position posted. Unfortunately, we found out that we had the funding in late August. That's not the best time to hire school personnel. So we still have to post it. I'm very confident we'll find the right fit, probably in March. And that person will hopefully then be able to carry out some of the additional options that we would like to offer for our students, which would be increased social emotional behavior at the elementary level, increased mental health programming across our district, possibly even district employed therapists. So they're embedded in our school, they work for us, and they are licensed therapists. Provide more student-led mental health activities. Again, Kale was talking about multi-district community events, organized parent events, schedule mental health presentations or bring in some expert speakers, and then any sort of mental health postage signage that would be helpful across our schools or even in the community. So we've got great opportunities. I think one of the things that community-wise, statewide, it's personnel. Like, we need therapists and we need staff. So if we can start finding those individuals that best fit our needs, it'll be able to support our students as well.
Well, thanks, Andy. Thanks, Cal. Not the kind of presentation you can enjoy when you talk about the dark side of this issue. What we can enjoy is the fact that some very competent people are working on this issue. And every time I work with school district mental health leaders like Cal and Andy, superintendents like Keith, I'm impressed with the skill, the dedication that they show for this important. I was working with some providers in Oshkosh a few months ago, a community-based clinic that has partnership with some of the school districts. And the woman had to cut our conversation short because she said she had 3 patients who were educators and who had attempted suicide. And educators have been leaving the field, and it's hard to fill those positions. There's a licensing delay for the credentialing and licensing of mental health practitioners in the state of Wisconsin. It's become a political football, partisan fight between some people in the legislature and some people in the governor's administration. So people who are paying the price for that delay, unfortunately, are our students who are on waiting lists. And as Andy and Cal mentioned, it's important that mental health services for students be embedded in the school district. And that's why in many school districts, there are on-site counselors or therapists, some through third-party providers in the community, like it's called the Bridge Clinic here in Wausau, that name right? And others. And I understand one mental health clinic recently had to close in Wausau, being absorbed by or merging with Bridge. So it's a challenge. And as Andy and Cal also implied, there's unfinished business within the school district. They figured out a good way to use the money that Connexus and the Member Benefits Foundation have provided. And it's not a small amount of money, but there's a larger amount of money needed. And I think Andy's given us a pretty good idea, a pretty good clue of how that money might be put to good use and what we might be able to expect. So we're going to go into a Q&A. We want all of you to have a chance to ask your questions, and especially if those questions can address why you're here and what you're hoping to get out of this particular session. Just a couple other points to add to what you heard. 20%, as was mentioned, of students present with behavioral or mental health challenges and issues. According to DPI, that spiked to 60% during COVID for high school students. 60, more than half. It has gotten better, but the residual effects of that traumatic experience for kids who are already addressing mental health challenges, pretty severe. When we talk to funders about this, many of them indicate that they weren't aware of the issue. Of course, they'd like to help. And we're seeing some good results all over the state. So happy to address any questions that you might have. I'll make one more point about stigma. It used to be that mental health was undiscussable, like especially in the school setting, just like sex education or LGBT issues or critical race theory, all these other things that are politically charged. Watertown, Wisconsin, one of our pilot districts, for example, they had to change the label that they were using for the social emotional learning program because that was getting political backlash from the community. That's stigma. It's starting to improve though. In Racine, another one of our participating school districts, students at one of the high schools in the Key Club, which is a student club that raises money for school and student causes. They decided that they wanted to raise money to help classmates who couldn't afford mental health treatment have money to afford the treatment. So much for high school stigma around mental health when classmates are trying to help other students raise the money to afford treatment. Some of the school districts are using the money that we're providing in order to offset the high deductibles and co-pays in their families' health insurance policies, which can sometimes make it unaffordable for their 14-year-old son or daughter to get treatment. So there's a lot of awareness about this, and the fact that you're here indicates there's a lot of interest in Wausau. We're also looking at other school districts in Marathon County in addition to Wausau. So depending on what kind of momentum we can sustain or increase, we might be expanding to other school districts as well. So I'll throw a question to Andy and Cal, and then the rest of you can chime in with your questions. Putting you on the spot, guys, if you had another block of money dropped into your lap tomorrow morning, how would that money add the greatest value in your student mental health?
You didn't have time to collaborate or answer.
I'll ask your boss.
They would know best. I don't need of them.
Okay, well, and that's why you showed up, to see if they were at the top of their game, right?
I have no doubt they are.
I know. What would you do?
So we got a couple, maybe we'll talk about it, because okay, Brent, you got a different idea with it, so one of the things that we've been talking about with Andy and I and with our business department is going to a potential tax levy for Fund 80. And I don't know if you're familiar with Fund 80, but Fund 80 is dollar amounts that can be used and get taxed for it, but then it can be used by the school district as long as there's a community benefit from it. So right now in the district, we use Fund 80 to fund our school resource officers, right? Because they also service the community, they're serving in school as well. So we'll do that. What we've talked about, and it goes to the idea of licensed therapists, community counselors. And so we've talked about, well, could we capitalize on Fund 80 to have community counselors that we would help pay their salaries so we can corner them a little bit, so that we have them available. And where we would say, well, we could use that in our community would be not just for school district students, but could we do it for our parochial schools? So Newman, some of the schools that we have around the area, so that kids who have mental health, their families that can't afford it, they could access that. Or also have where we can tie in where there's free clinic hours for community folks who can't afford that, go and speak with that counselor as well. So that would be one of the ideas of, if we wouldn't go to Fund 80 with it as the taxpayers, could we have dollars available to have an agreement with one of the mental health providers to do that? And I think, they're running their business, so we've had a consortium in the past where we've had folks in, it's been the quantity of certified counselors, the qualified counselors has gotten smaller. So could we offer something that's beneficial for them when you have these locked in hours, you have clients saying, well, we're gonna be there all the time, type of thing. So that would be what I would suggest. That'd be one of the dollar amounts that I think would be beneficial.
Okay, Andy, your turn.
I would agree.
But what else? What else?
Yeah. Looking at the continuum of services. So we've got our high school students that have identified needs that may respond better to therapy. So by providing in-house therapists, we're reaching those students, but sometimes we're reaching them after signs and symptoms of mental health. What can we do at the elementary level? And because we passed a referendum, we do have a school counselor, school social worker in all of our elementary buildings. But as the student needs change, so is the roles and responsibilities of those people services, where they're dealing with dysregulated students on a daily basis and have a harder time doing preventative mental health or social emotional learning due to their infrequent schedule. So if we had unlimited dollars, I would be looking at trying to provide.
Look at me.
Additional personnel support at the elementary level to help with the unregulated students, so that our pupil services who are trained in social emotional behavior modification can work with the students while they're in the moment. So it's hard to do both at the same time.
Great. Well, all of us hope that we can help to do that. Keith,
If I could just add on.
so this is the superintendent for the Wausau School District. You probably all know him, Keith Hiltz.
Thank you. Just listening to Kale and Andy, they're closest to this work, and really appreciate what you just said. From just a slightly different angle, you also recognize, you may have heard, there's also a teacher shortage. Difficult to find teachers, difficult to retain teachers. One of the strongest factors in trying to keep teachers in the field are the challenges with some of the behaviors that they experience in the classroom. So not only would these efforts help support mental health by students, It would also make our teachers' work more effective and help encourage them to stay in really one of the, no offense to anybody here, but one of the most important fields that anybody can work at, right? Because it supports our youth, builds our nation. So these efforts really impact really every aspect of our school, our community, our families, and really can impact the trajectory of a young person's life. So, yeah.
And that's why it's doubly important for the students as well as the teachers.
Yeah.
And that's why teachers and educators tell us that one of the things keeping them awake at night is student mental health. It affects the whole classroom and it affects the whole community. And I love, one of the reasons we picked Wausau in this effort is because we understand and we can clearly see the strong strategic connection between the school district's programming for mental health and the communities. You know, there's a consortium of, or a coalition of school-based counseling here in this community. Marathon County is overseeing that. And you know, that and what you heard about how embedded this approach is in the school district, other reasons why we and Connexus have chosen this particular district. Okay, ready for your questions, and the only thing standing between us and lunch is your questions and our answer. Yeah, and lunch will also give us a chance to connect a little bit further informally. So what questions do you have about this? Whether you are a funder or an interested community leader, what questions do you have about this and how it applies to Wausau School District here? Over here, your name and organization, please.
Michelle Gleason, I am the development director with the Community Foundation.
Michelle, question.
My question is, sounds like finding professionals is one of the biggest challenges. What currently recruitment efforts are there, and then what are you considering into years to come?
So I've been partnering with a lot of our universities and trying to find interns, because if we can get them into our systems while they're still going through school, it's like a long-term job interview. And if they're a good fit, we can build their skills and capacity. I also work for Lakeland University as an instructor. So one of my side jobs is to teach internship class. And over the years, I've had 10 students per class, and most of them in the last 5 years, all of them are doing their internship unlicensed. This year, I have 11 students, 7 of them are under contract. So it's a shortage across our state, but we are trying to connect. I know our HR department has been going to universities as well. We continue to post on the professional organizations to try to attract applicants. Word of mouth, $500 bonus if you are in the district and you recommend somebody. Think about that, yeah.
I tie in as well to the community kids that got together, because there were 3 distinct areas that we had talked about, 4 distinct areas that we talked about: parental involvement, student involvement, professional development, and systems connectivity was a large one. And that one, there's some kind of transformed a little bit to talk about legislative changes. How do we change things at a state level to make it more enticing and appealing for people to go into the field to draw more people?
Mm-hmm. And there are some statewide initiatives underway through several coalitions directly related to the regulatory climate and issues that sometimes keep people from being as effective as they might be. Thank you, Michelle. Next question. I saw a hand that was half up in the air. Ready for you. Ready for your question.
Sure. I don't know about that. Pam Jackson with the VA and the Student Foundation. As a funder, we obviously want our dollars to stretch as far as they can, so we can get more. Do you and this might be something you already do, but when you do professional development days that are focused on anything to do with mental health, is that offered to anyone outside the district, like nonprofits?
So let me repeat the question in case people in the other audience can't hear. So when professional development programming is offered in the school district, you open it up to staff or others outside of the school district.
So great question. So one of the things that we talked about with the professional development day that we did on the 26th was that how do we get this into the community as well? And so we toyed with the idea at the time to say, well, why don't we open it up to the community? But because it was the first time that we were dealing with this, and it was about 2,000 people that we had to move around the building, we said, well, maybe this year we're gonna hold off and then transform it into next year. But certainly for the Caring for Community Kids folks, we talked about clergy would be a great to invite in when we're talking about these things. Human resources directors, because businesses are dealing with the same things as well. So certainly on the horizon, something we want to do and have that broader coalition of people that are invited into this.
I just recently had a conversation with someone from the Girl Scouts, and I mean, for all these organizations, their dollars are so limited for any kind of professional development that it.
Yep, we did invite, so for this, the 26th, we invited people who were part of the that group, and I think we had about 30 people that came in to be part of that.
And the total number of participants was what, 2,000?
2,000.
Yeah, which was amazing. And it was joined with DC Everest. Right. Yes, sir. Name and organization.
Yeah, Andy Shannon with the Dudley Foundation here in Wausau. Kind of piggybacking off of that, just curious with the school districts itself, and then maybe Steve, even what you've worked with. But can we talk about collaboration with other nonprofits who are maybe more privy to working with mental health issues and behavioral health issues? What are examples with school districts actually seeking out collaboration with nonprofits that specialize in stuff like that?
Starting with Wausau. Examples. Some of your MOUs.
Yeah, so one of the things that we kind of did with the mental health navigator position, that would be something that we're really interested in. Part of that responsibility will be to do exactly that, right? How do we network out and get more folks involved? It feels a lot like we have all these really strong pockets of things that are going on for folks, but it's not this unified message in this system where all of a sudden everybody in the county is using the same exact. I mean, even when you look at some of the suicide prevention programs, Wausau has a program that's different than DC Everest. It's the same content, but the language is different. So if you have something that combines those things together. And then I think the other part about the mental health navigator that's really the beneficial side of it is, unfortunately, what happens is there's a tragic event that occurs in the community and everything's heightened, right? Why are we doing it like it? And as you get further away from that tragedy, there's less and less, I don't want to say concern that, but you know what I mean? Like it's not on a 400 person. How do you get somebody who can get where our heightened awareness is always there, right? That we're always concerned with this. So how do you combine all those community efforts together to get into one single vision and one theme?
If I'm just kind of, I don't know if this is where you're going to, but just so that everybody's aware, we have wonderful partnerships, right, with other, the Boys and Girls Clubs and United Way and support from the foundations. And many of these organizations, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and all focused on youth. So in that way, as we work together and we serve kids, I don't know if that's where you were going with your question.
A little bit of,
Just so we're aware, we have really strong working relationships with all the other youth serving organizations and social service organizations.
Well, and that's true throughout the state. Because study after study reveals that if a school district tries to address student mental health just with school district resources or personnel, it will not work. If they farm it all out to community-based providers, that also will not work. The partnership has to be intentional. It has to be official, like with a memorandum of understanding or contract. A lot of those third-party providers are also nonprofits like Catholic Charities, Children's Wisconsin, Youth and Social Services, and Journey Mental Health in Southern Wisconsin. I'm sure there are similar organizations here. And they're all facing similar issues in terms of staff shortages. Catholic Charities, for example, was invited to double the number of hours that it was spending with behavioral health in schools program in the Madison School District because the school district found some additional money. And Catholic Charities couldn't find a staff person to add to their staff team in order to fill that potential memorandum of understanding. So it's clear that the partnership between community providers and the school district's resources is essential for the successful navigation of mental health issues for the student. More questions? We have a couple more questions before lunch. Yes.
My name is Margie Starr. I'm a founding member of a local nonprofit called Impact 100 Greater Wausau. And I'm also a parent of children in the Wausau School District. And so I guess one of the questions that I would have is around engagement of families. Because I am a pretty involved parent in the district at the elementary level especially, but you know, one of the things you all led off about saying was you know, our school day used to be 7:30 to 3:30 or whatever, and now that extends with social media. As a parent of a 13-year-old who grappled with the right time to give a cell phone to this child, there are no resources out there, or not, it's not that there are no resources. The resources about how do I give my child this technology in an age-appropriate way is really hard to find. And that's also the pediatrician in the household. So I mean, I think that there could be some really interesting ways to engage families and sort of best practices around things, and that's just one example. But also, you know, I just read a book, which makes me an expert. But it was written by a therapist who deals with, who has a clinical practice for teens, and throughout her book, she was saying, when I had, you know, I go to the school district and I had a session with the kids during the day, and I always ask them, what do you want me to tell your parents in the session tonight? And, you know, one of the things I wrote down on my nightstand was talk to Wausau School District and DC Everest about combined, you know, bringing a speaker in like this. That could be a way to, I think, engage parents in the conversation around mental health, because I think sometimes we just don't know what we're doing and what the signs of a crisis are. So it's more of a comment than a question, and I'm sorry.
There's a statement within that, because over the past several years, we have offered mental health events in the Wausau District, Everest District, Mosby District, and 7 parents show up. What's that read the book?
Yeah.
And we're looking for more. We offered, we recorded them, and we can see how many people attend on YouTube. But I know collaborating with Eric Jacobson, the mental health coordinator at DC Everest, and Jen Anu, the school counselor at Marathon, and we supposedly just lost their coordinator, but I know one of the social workers there. We're talking about running multi-district county events held somewhere in a geographical area that they all can attend. So it's not just a Wausau event,
Right.
adolescent anxiety or how to operate cell phone use, etc. That way maybe we're trying to get more.
Yeah.
We collaborate with Marathon County and Albert County. Looking at it from a community standpoint, we do have strong connections, and we're recognizing that it's not just a school district issue, but we want to work with everybody.
Right. And maybe part of this too is, as you've all been saying, sort of the increased awareness and the destigmatization of around mental health issues. I mean, you know, yeah,
I know
yes.
that Raise Your Voice Student Club that we're talking about, as their numbers grow, our plan is to provide community-based events where the students are leading them. Like Wausau West,
Yeah.
5K walk.
Right.
We were, I don't know if they ever made it up to the 400 block with their green bandanas.
They did an event, I'm not sure which one.
Right.
Yes.
We are trying to get more students, because even the students are saying, we have to reach the families, we have to reach the parents at these events.
Right.
That is the challenge, and families are so, I've got a sophomore, and we're so inundated with information. How does this even highlight, and it's something that's really important. And I think Andy hits it on the head by saying, adults really listen to kids talk, and kids say this matters, and all of a sudden adults perk up and say, ooh, I gotta pay attention to this. So the student led educational opportunities. Good. Well,
clearly, this school district wants to plug in with the community. And family engagement is a big part of that. By the way, there's a significant increase right now in the number of, in the activity of peer support groups, especially in the high school level. And a lot of participation, a lot of leadership, and that's pretty compelling and effective for a lot of student issues. And some of that can be funded through the kind of grants that we were talking about here. Time for one more question before we sign off, talk about next steps.
Well, that's actually what I'm asking for. Sue Nelson from the Community Foundation. You do have a room full of funders here. You have probably virtually some potential funders. You said this is not a fundraising event, but at what point will we as funders hear about how we can make a difference with this issue in our community? And it won't be just Wausau School District. Most of the funders in this room are looking at Marathon County. What are the next steps? Maybe that's where you were leading, Steve.
Clearly, you want to get to lunch quickly.
So that, that we have an issue on the community as funders. We just kind of sit here with our hands tied until we get a proposal in front of us, or someone comes to our desks and.
Understood.
With Andy, with, myself, with Howard.
Sure, and we got those people in the room and they're excited and they want to contribute already, and we're saying we're not taking your money today. Before I answer that, I want Bailey to explain.
By the way, I had 5 donor advice from holders that said, I'm interested.
Right.
In my help, so
Okay.
the community is ready to help.
Yeah, let me answer that after Bailey explains, why did you decide to do this without school district coming to you hat in hand on bended knee with a grant proposal and a self-pity story and so on?
Ooh,
'Cause
yeah, couldn't.
You took the proactive step, and that's what people in this room are asking about right now.
Yeah, so our process, once we connected with Steve and got the data, it was a lot of open communication with myself and the school district, making ourselves available. But then ultimately, it was just kind of a matter of getting the check cut. I think a lot of times as funders, going back to Steve's earlier point of trust-based philanthropy, they're the ones who are doing the work. They're the ones with the boots on the ground. And from our perspective, we didn't feel it was necessarily our responsibility to gatekeep them from doing the work that they needed. So it was just a matter of getting having our group talk about it, and realize what an issue this is, and cutting the check. Like we do have an application process, but realizing this is such a different issue than some of the grants we're receiving, and such a broader issue than what our grant application process follows. And we still stay in contact. I know we're talking about, and we've highlighted how can we expand our support beyond just the financial piece of it. So I know it's on our to-do list after the first of the year. How can we get volunteer support, especially around Youth Mental Health Month in May? So we're expanding just beyond the financial piece of it. Does that answer?
Yeah, that's perfect. You can stay for lunch since you're not. Sue raises a good point. And in terms of next steps, I know that the school district folks and Bailey and I would be more than happy to talk to you one-on-one regarding, is this a good fit for you, and how much of it is a good fit, and what's your process, any way to streamline that process, etc. I brought 2 documents that we can also make available through links on the Community Foundation's website. One is a 1-page summary of the statewide initiative. Another is the evaluation report that the University of Wisconsin put together regarding this. And sometimes other board members in your organization might want to see the validation of this approach. I've also got business cards and would be more than happy to talk again one-on-one with you. I think that the the sequence of steps for some of you might be, okay, is this a good fit? What questions do we have about how the grants are administered and what are the parameters or the preferred approaches? Some foundations and corporate giving programs cannot make a donation directly to a unit of government such as a school district. They have to make it to a 501c3, in which case perhaps the community foundation could be a pass-through. I don't want to speak for them. Our foundation could be a pass-through, or the Wausau District Education Foundation, which I think is a 501c3, could be a pass-through for that. And I think in most of those cases, there's no fee or commission involved. That's important to some of you as well. I've got my business cards. They've already gone through a spell check, so they're valid. And some of you might want to move real fast because of year end coming on. That is not essential to the school district, but they have a different calendar in terms of their budget. We don't want to rush anybody. However, if you're interested, we don't want to delay you at all. So does that address your question?
And also, I would like to follow that up with thank you to the school district, to your organization, to Connexus for really taking this on. I would be very interested to find out what follow-ups are from the October 26th event. If there's another in-service day that's gonna come out, maybe there's gonna be some parent
I always leave the marching orders.
seminars or. Except for the excellent, and only expect that's the way that whole day went.
Yeah, so the follow-up for us is, I'm guessing, we haven't discussed it thoroughly, but I'm guessing we'll do it again next year. I think the foundation for it has been laid, and now we know what to expect for it with it. The other thing that we want to do is kind of look at surveys of folks that, the speakers that did well, that people responded to, and bring them back for nighttime presentations for families to say, you know, these folks spoke, they had a high, and then have kind of what you're talking about, spoken up for families.
And if you want to designate all or part of your gift, if you decide this is a good fit for you, when to designate part of it or all of it to DC Everest School District or Mosinee, we're happy to facilitate that as well. And I know that the Wausau District folks feel the same way. Okay, I didn't bring a whole bunch of business cards, so come and get them while they're hot. One more question?
Yeah, just one last thing, and this is just kind of, I don't want to call it a rare opportunity, but a good opportunity. And Andy, this is probably directed at you the most, but you know, we see this stuff and just working with different organizations who are privy to mental health care and whatnot. Can we just get some, you know, what are the kids actually going through right now? And I don't, you know, need specific examples, but you know, when it comes down to stressors and life in high school and elementary school, middle school, you know, what are we up against? What are you hearing in the trenches kind of? And, you know, it seems like social media and cell phone usage and whatnot, and the cyberbullying and bullying that happens and occurs through that. Somebody mentioned that never shuts off really anymore. So, you know, it's a tough task, but are these numbers climbing because of the digital age we've entered, or is it other factors, other health factors?
Great theory-based answer. Because I'm sure everybody's thinking that there's multiple factors that are causing these changes in students throughout the years. I would offer, is there any parents that want to give a quick answer about some things that you're dealing with at home? I mean, I've got a 19 and 20-year-old, and Kim's got 4 3-year-olds. So, I mean, they're not living the current situation. So before I answer, is there anybody that wants to give a more personal?
I think what's good I have heard from kids and Kelly and Michelle is the college pressures. And everything that's on them is. I'm so glad my kids are past that, but I feel so bad for the kids that aren't, because it's like you have to have a job and you have to have extracurriculars, you have to volunteer and you have to get straight A's and.
And junior year will make or break me for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we actually shared with some of them that, you know, like for example, I was a music business degree. So right now I'm in a job that I use none of those skills for. And we actually had some students that breathed a sigh of relief. And I said that, don't worry, you can still get your degree. We obviously want you to be a well-rounded person. I said, but if life leads you in another direction, that's okay. And these kids were like, oh my gosh, thank you. You know, we actually had a kid that teared up. So, yeah.
When I go back to Andy's question.
Yeah.
What age level are you asking?
Right.
Because I'm thinking a lot of you are picturing a high school student right now, but our elementary students are struggling as well with mental health. It just doesn't look like it because of the signs and symptoms before actual diagnosis, but we got this licensed therapist here.
Yeah, I would just add, yeah, I'm a licensed clinical social worker too, my little side gig. But what I would add to that is just adult mental health has changed too. So adults modeling our stability is part of that and our addiction to social media as well. But also substance use has increased so much and that affects kids in so many different ways. So I just add those two factors in there too.
And poverty as well.
Poverty.
I mean, I think, you know, I was at elementary school yesterday morning making popcorn for kids and we set up as they're taking down breakfast and the little girl walked by me and I said, I hope you have a great day. And just no affect, just walked right by me. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is going on in that little person's head? That, you know, I just don't know.
I want to channel my inner Abigail Bushman. She's my middle child. She's now a father of the state, but she will tell me, Dad, you know I suffer from homework. I mean, what in the world is homework? Fear of missing out. And so they see this world on whatever the social media platform can be, and kids don't post pictures that aren't fantastic with them. So she's engaging herself against them all the time, and so we have to have those conversations. That's not real. That's not real. So I mean, I do think there's challenges that kids have nowadays. I think what they need is the same as like that, right? A kind, caring, listening person who cares about them. And I think that goes.
Yeah, well, we care about you and your appetite. But to close this out, again, I think you can see that the people in this school mental health field really have their act together. And in order to help them, you know, we're happy to connect you with them as potential private funders of their efforts. And feel free to come up and get any of the materials that I brought. Talk to Bailey about the Connexus Credit Union experience and how they have arranged this. And feel free to reach out. Let's thank our presenters from the school district.